The destiny of South Africa has been shaped by the major battles that have occurred in the uMzinyathi region, an area of northern KwaZulu-Natal. No other part of South Africa has witnessed such a concentration of bitter conflicts. Among these verdant hills, there have been epic battles between the Voortrekkers and Zulus, between the British and Zulus, and between the British and the Boers. Some of these battles made world headlines at the time and continue to draw international attention. The major battlefields that lie within the boundaries of the uMzinyathi Regional Council are all, to a greater or lesser extent, world-renowned. The year 1838 was a turbulent year in these parts, as the Voortrekkers had suffered one defeat after another in their encounters with the Zulus under King Dingaan, who in turn was concerned about the growing influx of settlers into his kingdom. In their desperation, the Voortrekkers made a solemn vow on the 9th of December of that year.
Here we stand, before the holy God of heaven and earth, to make to him a vow that if he will protect us and deliver our enemies into our hands, we will observe the day and date each year as a day of thanks, like a Sabbath.
After reaching the area where the battle was to take place, the leader of the Voortrekkers, Andries Pretorius, ordered the formation of a laager west of the Ngome River, afterwards to be known by many as Blood River. On December the 16th, 1838, some 15,000 Zulus attacked the 450 Voortrekkers. Making maximum use of the cover afforded them by their laager of wagons, the Venkumandu held their own and defeated the determined warriors. 160 years later, on December the 16th, 1998, a monument was unveiled by King Goodwill Zwelithini to acknowledge the bravery of the Zulus who fell at the Battle of Ngome. Deputy President Thabo Mbeki touched a reconciliatory note when he declared in his address,
"Because this monument is a monument of all of the people of South Africa."
On his succession to the Zulu throne in 1872, King Cetshwayo set about building up the Zulu kingdom. This build-up was seen as a threat by the colonists of Natal, and on the 11th of December 1878, an ultimatum was presented to the Zulu indunas, who conveyed the message to King Cetshwayo. With the expiry of the ultimatum, 1 month later, British troops invaded Zululand. The largest column, under the command of Lord Chelmsford, crossed the Buffalo River at Rorke's Drift.
And here at Isandlwana he sets up camp. He then reacts to some incorrect information that the Zulus were way off to his southeast. So in retrospect he does a terribly unwise thing. He split this column, and away he goes off into the southeast with over half the men. And while he was away, a patrol strayed up onto that big plateau, and Charlie Raw got the fright of his life. These men had to rein in their horses, they tell us, to prevent their horses from falling into a gully. And they stared aghast at what was in this gully. Raw said, below and beyond us, stretching off along the course of that Ingwebeni stream. Off, he said, in an easterly direction, as far as the eye could see, packed in there, squatting in absolute silence upon their great war shields, regiment by disciplined regiment, were the Zulus of the main Zulu army. The Zulus emerged from that gully. Raw and his men turned and fled. And this huge impi, breaking up into its tactic of the horns of the buffalo, hit that skyline. The skyline turned black with Zulus. And a great wing of the Zulu army came over the skyline at the notch and swept across the plain. And the next thing, a huge number of Zulus had emerged in that gully. That was the right horn of the Zulu army. That way out on the plain was the left horn of the Zulu army. And that was the head and the chest of the Zulu army. And in under 2 hours, this camp at Isandlwana was destroyed. And Britain had suffered her greatest defeat in these colonies. Or perhaps, as one should look at this was a great Zulu victory.
The reenactment of the Battle of Isandlwana marked the 120th anniversary of this famous battle, at which reigning King Goodwill Zwelithini unveiled a bronze memorial to the fallen warriors.
This monument was built by the money donated by all Amakosi from KwaZulu-Natal, and the people are very proud of it.
Also unveiled on this special day was a monument to the gunners. Isandlwana, still a focus of world attention, is a battlefield where the conflicts of the past have been healed. The visiting Royal Regiment of Wales, successors to the 24th Regiment who lost many of their comrades at Isandlwana, bring gifts of friendship to the local community. Today, the victorious Amabuto rejoice with their king in a gesture of reconciliation. And the vanquished entertain the king and company with much pomp and splendor. Isandlwana is a battlefield that will continue to attract world attention, as well as having a special place in both South African and British history. The survivors of the defeated British column fled the battlefield and crossed the Buffalo River at Fugitives Drift. Here, Lieutenants Melville and Coghill lost their lives trying to save the Queen's colours. The drama of that fateful day on the 22nd of January 1879 continued through into the late afternoon, when a Zulu force commanded by Prince Dabulamanzi Kampande attacked the British hospital and commissariat store at Rorke's Drift with a force of some 4,000 men. Defending their position with only 110 fit men, the British, under Lieutenant Chard, recorded one of their most heroic victories. During the battle, the Zulus managed to break through onto the veranda of the hospital and set the thatch roof on fire, forcing the defenders to evacuate the building. As all the rooms opened onto the veranda and there were no interleading doors, this forced the men to defend each doorway and to dig their way through the walls in order to evacuate the patients.
This little pocket of British soldiers, 139 men, of whom 35 were sick, of whom 16 couldn't even move, held out all night against this impossible attack by 4,500 Zulus in what must surely be one of the most famous battles that Britain ever fought. There were 11 Victoria Crosses awarded for valor here. There were more VCs awarded for valor in this little battle than in any other battle in history. And that's why this must be one of the great attractions of this part of the world.
After further attacks throughout the night, the Zulus finally withdrew at 4 o'clock the following morning. A record number of 11 Victoria Crosses was awarded to the defenders of Rorke's Drift. Memorials to the fallen on both sides of the conflict are located in the grounds at Rorke's Drift. The battles of Isandlwana and Rorke's Drift are also commemorated in the annual half marathon that ends at Rorke's Drift. Among the runners from many parts of the country and overseas is a contingent of 22 runners from the Natal Carbineers, representing the number of their fellow men who died at Isandlwana. The village of Helpmekar was at the crossroads of both the Anglo-Zulu and Anglo-Boer wars. It was from here that Chelmsford launched his invasion of Zululand. This is all that remains of the original British fort used during the Zululand campaign. But the graves of British soldiers who died during that conflict can be found in the military cemetery. Situated on the top of Helpmekar Hill are the ruins of the Anglo-Boer War fort. The Anglo-Zulu War of 1879 is also remembered in these parts for bringing to an end the last of the Bonaparte dynasty. The Prince Imperial, Louis Napoleon, was among an advance party searching for a suitable campsite when he was killed. The Anglo-Zulu War also brought Boer and Brit together when Piet Ace's Burger Force and the British were cut off and surrounded by a large Zulu impi on Hlobane Mountain. Ace was killed in this clash, and his memorial can be seen in the town of Utrecht. The Boer Republic of the Transvaal and the British clashed at Majuba in 1881, climaxing the Transvaal War of Independence. General Colley had led the British troops up the mountain during the night, believing it was the best position to hold. Early the following morning, the Boers were ordered by Commandant General Piet Joubert to climb the mountain and drive the British off. Using a unique tactic called skiet mekaar los, nowadays referred to as fire and movement, they did just that. In the ensuing battle, General Colley was killed, and the Zuid-Afrikaanse Republiek regained much of its former independence. The end of the 19th century was marked by the worst military conflict that South Africa has ever experienced. Although the first shots of the Anglo-Boer War were fired at Kraipan in the northwest province, Talana is where the first battle between the Boers and British occurred. The British Brigade, under General Penn Simons, was anxious to stop the Boer general, Lucas Meyer, from linking up with the main Boer army under General Joubert, and a further group under General Erasmus. Boer commandos from the Transvaal and Free State republics crossed the border into Natal and converged on Dundee. It was here, at Talana, that the Boer gunners began shelling the British position, and in response, Penn Simons ordered his 18 guns into action. Using the cover of the stone walls at Smith's Farm and the trees at the foot of the hill, Simons decided to launch an infantry attack on Meyer. The British were initially unable to storm the hill owing to the fury of the Mauser bullets. But Simons, in his determination, rode onto the battlefield to urge them on, and while he was climbing over a stone wall, he was mortally wounded. He was taken to a hospital in the town, where he died 2 days later, and was buried in the grounds of the local Anglican church. The British, now under the command of General Ewell, and inspired by Penn Simons' determination, went on the attack and finally cleared Talana Hill of Boers. But this victory was short-lived, as the shelling from the Boers' Long Tom from Umpati forced the British troops to retreat from Dundee to Ladysmith. The first armed struggle against a South African white minority regime occurred in this region in the early part of the 20th century when Bambatha, an African chief, waged a campaign against the white authorities of Natal, protesting against a new hut tax. His band of poorly armed men were finally trapped in a small valley where Bambatha and 500 of his followers were massacred by rifle, machine gun, and artillery fire.